The old man at gate 47 smelled like cigarettes and motor oil. His jacket had duct tape holding the sleeves together. His boots were so worn, you could see his socks through the cracks. And when he approached the boarding counter with a first-class ticket, the gate agent looked at him like he'd just crawled out of a dumpster. "Excuse me, sir," the agent said, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is first-class boarding. You'll need to wait with the other passengers." The old man held up his ticket. "Ma'am, I have a first-class ticket right here." The agent barely glanced at it. "That has to be fake. People like you don't fly first class." Behind him, a businessman in a $3,000 suit laughed out loud. "Buddy, you smell like you haven't showered in weeks. Go wait outside with the other bums." Within seconds, phones came out. People started recording. A mother covered her child's eyes and whispered something about staying in school. The gate agent called security. "We have a situation here. Possible vagrant attempting to board with a fraudulent ticket." The old man just stood there, silent, watching, while a crowd gathered to see the homeless man get what he deserved. But what they didn't know, what none of them could possibly imagine, was that this 72-year-old man in duct-taped boots owned the entire airport. And in the next 100 minutes, I'm going to tell you exactly how one act of cruelty turned into the most expensive lesson anyone at Terminal C ever learned. Before we take off, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. This story is going global, and I want to see how far kindness can travel. Now buckle up, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity and make you question everyone you've ever judged. Let's begin. His name was Robert James Calloway, 72 years old, widower, former Marine, Vietnam veteran, and the single largest private investor in Metropolitan International Airport. But on this Tuesday morning in November, nobody at Gate 47 knew any of that. They just saw an old man who looked homeless, and they treated him accordingly. Robert had woken up that morning in his penthouse overlooking the city, 14,000 square feet, floor-to-ceiling windows, art collection worth $8 million. He'd stood in his walk-in closet, looked at the rows of handmade Italian suits, the custom leather shoes, the silk ties that cost more than most people's monthly rent. And then, he'd walked past all of it. He'd gone to the storage room, pulled out a box labeled Gad's Things. Inside was his father's old work jacket, canvas, stained with grease and paint. His father had worn it every day for 30 years working at a factory, had died wearing it when his heart gave out on the assembly line. Robert put on the jacket, found a pair of old jeans with holes in the knees, boots he'd worn when he was building his first business, before the money came. He hadn't shaved in a week, hadn't combed his hair. He looked in the mirror and saw exactly what he wanted to see. Someone invisible. Someone the world had forgotten. This wasn't the first time Robert had done this. Once a year, for the past 15 years, he did what he called the walk. He dressed as a homeless person and visited the businesses he owned. The airport, the hotel chains, the restaurant franchises. He wanted to see how his employees treated people when they thought nobody important was watching. Most years, it was disappointing. But this year was going to be different. Because this year, he was going to do something about it. Robert had arrived at the airport at 6 in the morning. He'd walked through the main terminal slowly, shuffling, head down, the way he'd seen homeless people walk when they were trying not to be noticed. People avoided him, stepped around him. One woman actually said, "Excuse me," in a tone that meant, "Get out of my way." He'd sat in the food court for an hour, watched people throw away half-eaten meals, mountains of food going into the trash while he sat there looking hungry. Not one person offered him anything. Not one. He'd walked to the bathrooms. A security guard had followed him, watched him wash his hands, made sure he didn't steal anything or sleep in a stall. The guard's name tag said, Michael Torres. Robert made a mental note. Then he'd gone to gate 47, his gate. He had a flight to Dallas, first-class ticket, purchased under his real name. He wanted to see what would happen when someone who looked like him tried to board a plane. He found out. The gate agent's name was Patricia Monroe, 43 years old, had worked for the airport for 12 years, made $58,000 a year, had a file in HR with 3 complaints about attitude toward passengers. Robert knew all of this because he owned 43% of the airport. He knew everything. Patricia looked at Robert's ticket like it was contaminated. "Sir, I'm going to need to verify this." Robert nodded. "Of course." Patricia picked up her phone, called her supervisor. While they waited, the businessman behind Robert got louder. "Seriously, buddy, when's the last time you took a shower? You're making everyone sick here." A younger man joined in. "Dude probably stole that ticket. Check if it's reported missing." Robert turned slightly, looked at the businessman. The man was mid-40s, Rolex on his wrist, Gucci loafers. Self-made millionaire probably. Thought his money made him better than everyone else. Robert had met 1,000 guys like this. Hell, he used to be a guy like this. Before Margaret died. Before he learned what actually mattered. The supervisor arrived. Her name was Diane Foster, 51 years old, 20 years with the airport, made $72,000 a year, had a perfect record. Robert had high hopes for Diane. She looked at the ticket, looked at Robert, then did something that made his heart sink. She stepped back. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside while we verify your ticket. This could take some time." Behind him, people were getting restless. The first-class line was backing up. A woman in yoga pants and a designer handbag spoke up. "Can we please just board? He's obviously scamming. Just kick him out so the rest of us can get on the plane." Security arrived. 2 guards. The first was Michael Torres, the same guard who'd followed Robert to the bathroom. The second was a younger woman. Badge said, K. Williams. Torres approached with his hand on his belt, near his pepper spray. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us." Robert didn't move. "I have a valid ticket. I'm a paying passenger. I have a right to board this flight." Torres stepped closer. "Sir, if you don't comply, we'll have to remove you by force." The phones were out now, multiple angles. This was going to be all over social media in minutes. Homeless man kicked off plane. Airport security brutalizes veteran. The headlines wrote themselves. Robert was about to say something when a voice cut through the noise. "Excuse me." Everyone turned. A young woman stepped forward. She was maybe 25, petite, dark hair pulled back in a bun, flight attendant uniform. Name tag said, Emily Chen. She walked up to Patricia and Diane. "May I see the ticket, please?" Patricia handed it over reluctantly. Emily studied it carefully. She pulled out her phone, scanned the barcode, checked something on her screen. Then she looked at Robert. Really looked at him. Not at his clothes, not at the duct tape, at his eyes. "Sir, your ticket is valid. There's no issue here." Patricia's face turned red. "Emily, you don't have the authority to—" "I have the authority to verify a boarding pass," Emily interrupted. Her voice was quiet but steady. "And this one is legitimate. This passenger has every right to board this aircraft." Diane stepped forward. "Emily, let's not make a scene. We need to follow protocol." "What protocol?" Emily asked. A protocol that says we treat every passenger with respect, because that's the only protocol I'm aware of. The crowd went silent. Robert felt something in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Emily turned to Robert. "Sir, I apologize for how you've been treated. This is unacceptable. Please, let me help you board." She gestured toward the jetway. Robert looked at her, really looked at her, saw the trembling in her hands, saw the fear in her eyes. She was terrified of what she was doing, terrified of standing up to her supervisors. But she was doing it anyway. "Why?" Robert asked quietly. "Why are you helping me?" Emily met his eyes. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because I was taught that everyone deserves dignity, no matter what they look like or where they come from." Robert felt tears sting his eyes. "Who taught you that?" "My dad," Emily said. A small smile crossed her face. "He was a pilot, flew for this airport for 30 years. He always said that the measure of a person isn't how they treat the powerful, it's how they treat the powerless." Robert's breath caught. "What was your father's name?" "Emily Chen. Captain David Chen." The world stopped. Robert knew that name. Captain David Chen had been one of his first pilots when he'd started investing in the airport 30 years ago. They'd become friends. David had been a good man, a brilliant pilot, a mentor to dozens of younger aviators. He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden. Tragic. Robert had gone to the funeral, but he hadn't known David had a daughter working at the airport. "Sir," Emily said, "are you okay?" Robert nodded slowly. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small business card. It was simple, cream-colored, embossed lettering. Just a name and a phone number. He pressed the card into Emily's hand. "Keep this. When you get home tonight, call the number on the back." Emily looked confused. "Sir, I don't understand." "Just trust me," Robert said. "Please." That's when the announcement came over the PA system. "Good morning, passengers. This is your captain speaking. We're about to begin boarding for Flight 447 to Dallas. I'd like to take a moment to welcome a very special passenger joining us today. Dad, if you're out there listening, I saved you the window seat you always like." The gate area went dead silent. Patricia's clipboard clattered to the floor. Diane's face went sheet white. Torres stepped back like he'd been slapped. The businessman in the Gucci loafers looked like he was going to be sick. Robert smiled, looked at Emily, whose mouth was hanging open. "The card," he said gently. "Look at the card." Emily looked down, turned the card over, read it. Her eyes went wide. The card said, "Robert James Calloway, majority shareholder, Metropolitan International Airport, former CEO, Callaway Industries." And underneath, in handwritten script, "Your father was one of my best friends. He would be so proud of you today. Call me tonight. We need to talk about your future." Emily looked up at Robert, tears streaming down her face. You're Robert James Calloway," he said, "and your father saved my life once, 30 years ago. I was flying to close a deal, hit terrible turbulence, thought the plane was going down. Your dad brought us through it, didn't even flinch. Afterward, I asked him how he stayed so calm. He said, 'I've seen worse, and I've learned that panic never saved anyone, only kindness does.'" Robert looked around at the crowd, at Patricia, at Diane, at Torres, at the businessman, at all the people who'd recorded him, who'd judged him, who'd laughed. "I wanted to see if those words still meant anything," Robert said. His voice carried across the silent gate area. I wanted to see if the people who work at this airport, the airport I've poured my life into, actually believed in treating every person with respect and dignity." He paused. "Let that sink in. Most of you failed." Patricia tried to speak. "Mr. Calloway—"
I didn't know."
"That's the point," Robert said. His voice was hard now. "You didn't know. You didn't know who I was. So you treated me like garbage, because you thought I was nobody, because you thought I didn't matter." He turned to Torres. "You followed me to the bathroom, watched me like I was going to steal something. I'm a 72-year-old man who served this country, and you treated me like a criminal." Torres couldn't meet his eyes. Robert looked at the businessman. "And you, with your Rolex and your smug little comments, you told me I smelled. You told me to go wait outside with the other bums." The businessman opened his mouth, closed it, said nothing. Robert turned back to Emily. "But you," he said, his voice softening. "You stood up. You didn't know who I was. You just knew it was wrong. You risked your job, your career, everything, for a stranger you thought was homeless." Emily wiped her eyes. "My dad would have done the same thing." "I know," Robert said. "That's why I want to offer you a job." Emily blinked. "What?" "I need a new director of passenger experience for the entire airport," Robert said. "Someone who understands that every person who walks through these doors deserves to be treated with dignity. Someone who has the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. The job pays $140,000 a year, full benefits, your own office, and the authority to fire anyone who treats passengers the way you were all treating me today." The gate area was silent. You're serious?" Emily whispered. "I've never been more serious in my life," Robert said. "Call me tonight. We'll talk details." Then he turned to Patricia. "You're fired." Patricia gasped. "Mr. Calloway, please. I have kids. I have a mortgage." "You should have thought about that before you called me trash," Robert said. "You have until end of business today to clear out your desk." He looked at Diane. "You're on probation. 6 months. One more complaint and you're out." Diane nodded. Couldn't speak. Robert turned to Torres. "You're being reassigned. Parking lot security, night shift. You want to watch people like they're criminals? Go watch cars." Torres's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Then Robert looked at the businessman. "And you? I don't own you. I can't fire you. But I can make sure that every business I own in this airport knows your face. You're banned from my restaurants, my shops, my lounges. You want to fly through this airport? You can eat vending machine food and sit on the floor." The businessman's face went purple. "You can't do that." "I absolutely can," Robert said. "It's my airport." The man looked around for support. Found none. Everyone was staring at him with disgust. He grabbed his bag and stormed off toward another gate, muttering about lawyers. Robert watched him go. Then he looked at Emily. "Shall we board?" Emily nodded, still crying, still shaking. She walked with Robert to the jetway. As they passed the crowd, people started clapping, slowly at first, then louder. Someone shouted, "Good for you!" Someone else yelled, "About time!" By the time Robert reached the plane door, the entire gate area was on their feet, applauding. The captain was waiting at the entrance, 35 years old, looked just like his father. "Robert James Calloway," the captain said, extending his hand. "I'm Captain Michael Chen, David's son." Robert shook his hand, held it. "Your father was a great man." "I know," Michael said, "and so are you, for what you did today, for standing up for my sister." Robert looked back at Emily, who was still at the gate, talking to passengers. "She's remarkable, just like her dad. Michael nodded. "Come on, let's get you to Dallas." Robert settled into his first-class seat, 1A, window, just like the captain had said. A flight attendant brought him champagne, asked if he needed anything. Robert declined. He just wanted to sit, to think, to process what had just happened. He pulled out his phone, opened his notes app, started writing. Things to change at Metropolitan International. Mandatory dignity and respect training for all staff. Quarterly reviews. Surprise inspections. No tolerance policy for discrimination. Bonuses for employees who go above and beyond in treating passengers well. Create a passenger advocate position. Someone passengers can report to directly if they feel mistreated. He kept writing, page after page. The plane took off. Robert looked out the window, watched the city shrink below him. Thought about his father, the man who'd worked in a factory his whole life, who'd been treated like he was disposable, who died on the line because he couldn't afford to miss a day of work. Robert had spent 50 years building wealth so he'd never be like his father, so he'd never be powerless, so he'd never be invisible. But somewhere along the way, he'd realized something. Money didn't make you visible. Kindness did. Dignity did. Treating people like they mattered. That's what made you seen. His phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "Mr. Calloway, this is Emily. I don't know what to say except thank you. Not just for the job offer, but for giving me the chance to make my dad proud today. I'll call you tonight. P.S. I think you and my dad would have gotten along really well." Robert smiled, typed back, "We did. He was one of my best friends, and he raised an incredible daughter. Talk tonight." He put his phone away, closed his eyes, and for the first time in 5 years, since Margaret died, Robert James Calloway felt like maybe, just maybe, the world was going to be okay. The flight to Dallas was uneventful. Robert slept most of the way. When they landed, Captain Michael Chen made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying with us today. Before you deplane, I want to share something. Today, my airline was tested, and we failed. Almost all of us failed. We judged someone based on how they looked instead of who they were. But one person passed that test. My sister Emily Chen stood up for a stranger when no one else would. She risked everything to do what was right. And because of her courage, things are going to change. Not just at this airport, but everywhere." The passengers applauded again. Robert was the last to leave the plane. Michael met him at the door. "Thank you," Michael said, "for seeing what my sister is capable of." Robert shook his head. "I didn't do anything. She did." Michael smiled. "My dad used to say that the best leaders don't create good people. They just recognize them and give them a platform. That's what you did today." Robert felt his throat tighten. "Your father was a wise man. I miss him every day," Michael said. "But seeing Emily today, standing up like that, it felt like he was there, like he was speaking through her." "He was," Robert said. "He absolutely was." They shook hands. Robert walked through the Dallas airport. Nobody recognized him. He was just another old man in a worn jacket. He liked it that way. He caught a cab to his hotel, the Callaway Grande, one of 15 luxury hotels he owned across the country. The doorman opened the door, welcomed him warmly, didn't even blink at his appearance. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the Callaway Grande." Robert smiled. "Thank you. You know, you're the first person today who's called me sir and actually meant it." The doorman looked confused, but he smiled back. "Everyone deserves respect, sir. That's our policy." Robert made a note to find out this man's name. Give him a raise. He checked in, went to his suite, showered, shaved, put on a proper suit, looked at himself in the mirror. There he was, Robert James Calloway, billionaire, investor, philanthropist. He looked the part now, but he didn't feel any different than he had that morning in the duct-taped jacket. Because he wasn't different. The clothes didn't change who he was. That evening his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Calloway, this is Emily Chen." "Emily, thank you for calling. I don't even know where to start. Today was exactly what I needed to see," Robert interrupted gently. "Emily, I've been doing this walk for 15 years. Do you know how many people have stood up for me the way you did?" "How many?" 3. In 15 years. 3 people out of thousands. You're one of them." Silence on the line. "Why do you do it?" Emily asked finally. "Why dress like that? Why put yourself through that?" Robert sat down, looked out at the Dallas skyline. "Because I need to remember. I need to remember what it's like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be treated like you don't matter. The moment I forget that, I become the kind of person who treated me badly today." "That won't happen to you," Emily said. Robert laughed. "You don't know that. Power changes people. Money changes people. I've seen it happen to friends, to colleagues, to people I respected. They get comfortable. They forget where they came from. They forget that they're lucky, not better." "But you haven't forgotten." "Not yet. But I work at it every day." They talked for 2 hours about Emily's father, about her career, about her dreams. She wanted to make aviation more accessible, more humane. She wanted people to feel welcomed, not processed. "You sound like your dad," Robert said. "He used to say that flying should be joyful, that getting on a plane should feel like the start of an adventure, not a chore." "He really said that?" "All the time. He lived it too. He knew every regular passenger's name, remembered their kids, asked about their lives. He made people feel seen." Emily was quiet for a moment. "I want to do that. Not just for passengers, for employees too. I want to create a culture where people care, where kindness is the standard, not the exception." "Then let's do it," Robert said. "Tomorrow, fly back. We'll have a meeting. You, me, and the executive team. We're going to redesign the entire passenger experience from the ground up. And you're going to lead it." "Mr. Calloway, I'm 25 years old. I've been a flight attendant for 3 years. Nobody's going to listen to me." "They will, because I'm going to make sure they do. And because you have something none of them have." "What's that?" "Moral courage. The willingness to stand up when it costs you something. That's rare, and it's exactly what we need." Emily's voice cracked. "Thank you. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for reminding me why I built this company in the first place." They hung up. Robert sat in the darkening room. His phone buzzed again. Email from his head of security. Subject: Today's incident. The email detailed everything. Videos had gone viral, millions of views. #AirportJustice was trending. People were calling for Patricia and Torres to be fired, which they already were. The businessman had been identified. His company's stock had dropped 2 points as people called for boycotts. But the biggest story was Emily. Someone had posted a longer video. It showed her full conversation with Robert, her defense of him, her courage. She was being called a hero. Job offers were flooding in. News outlets wanted interviews. Robert replied to the email, "Make sure Emily is protected from the media circus. Give her whatever support she needs. And find out who took those videos. I want to thank them." He meant it. Those videos were doing more for his mission than any speech or policy ever could. They were showing the world what he'd been trying to prove for years. That character is revealed in how you treat people who can't do anything for you. That evening, Robert had dinner alone in his suite. Room service brought him a steak, perfectly cooked. He thought about the homeless people he'd sat next to in the airport food court that morning. The ones watching people throw away enough food to feed them for days. He picked up the phone.
Called the restaurant.
"This is Robert Calloway in the penthouse suite. I'd like to make a standing order." "Of course, Mr. Calloway. What can we do for you?" "Every night at closing, I want all leftover prepared food packaged and delivered to the downtown Mission. Not the scraps, the good food, the same food you'd serve to paying customers. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir. Absolutely." "Good. And make sure it's done with dignity. No garbage bags, proper containers, like you're delivering to a catering event." "Understood, Mr. Calloway. One more thing. I want this policy implemented at every Calloway property, hotels, restaurants, airports. If we're throwing away food while people go hungry, we're doing something wrong." "I'll make sure it happens, sir." "Thank you." Robert hung up. It wasn't much. It wouldn't solve hunger. But it was something. And something was better than nothing. The next morning, Robert flew back to his city, commercial flight, first class. This time, he wore a suit. Nobody gave him a second look. The gate agent smiled and said, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Calloway." The security guard nodded respectfully. The flight attendants offered him champagne and warm towels. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly how it was supposed to be. And it made Robert sad, because he knew that if he'd been wearing the duct-taped jacket, none of this would have happened. He'd be back in the cattle line with everyone else, or worse, outside the airport entirely. The system only worked if you looked the part. Emily met him at the airport. She was wearing a business suit, hair down. She looked nervous. "Ready?" Robert asked. "No," Emily admitted, "but let's do it anyway." They walked to the executive wing, conference room 12. The entire leadership team was waiting, 12 executives, all men except for one woman, all over 50 except for two, all white except for one. Robert had built this team, promoted them, trusted them, and yesterday they'd all failed.
He took his seat at the head of the table.
Emily sat to his right. The executives looked confused. Who was this young woman? Why was she here? Robert didn't make them wait. "Gentlemen, and Linda, thank you for coming on short notice. I want you to meet Emily Chen. As of today, she's our new Director of Passenger Experience." Silence. Then, "Robert, with all due respect," one of the VPs started. His name was Gerald, 63 years old, 30 years with the company. "We already have a Director of Passenger Experience, Tom Harris." "Not anymore," Robert said. "Tom is being reassigned. Emily is taking over." "She's 25 years old," another executive said. "Martin, Chief Financial Officer. She's been a flight attendant for 3 years." "Exactly," Robert said. "She understands the passenger experience because she lives it every day, unlike the rest of us who fly first class and never talk to anyone." "But she has no management experience," Gerald protested. "She has something more important," Robert said. "She has integrity." He pulled out his phone, played the video from the day before, showed them Emily standing up to Patricia, defending Robert, risking everything for a stranger. The room went silent as they watched. When it ended, Robert looked around the table. "Yesterday, I dressed as a homeless man. I went to our airport. I was mocked, humiliated, threatened with arrest by our own employees I trusted to represent the values of this company. He let that sink in. Everyone failed. Security, management, other passengers, everyone except Emily. She was the only one who treated me like a human being, the only one who stood up for what was right. Gerald shifted uncomfortably. Robert, yesterday was an anomaly. Our staff is generally very professional. Are they? Robert asked. Because I've been doing this walk for 15 years. I've visited 30 of our properties, and I can count on one hand the number of employees who passed the test. The executives exchanged glances. I've been too soft, Robert continued. I've been letting things slide because I trusted you all to maintain our standards. That trust was misplaced. What are you saying? Linda asked quietly. She was the COO, the only woman at the table, the only one who looked genuinely concerned. I'm saying things are going to change, Robert said. Starting today, Emily is going to lead a complete overhaul of our passenger experience, every policy, every procedure, every employee training program. And you're all going to support her. And if we don't? Martin asked. His tone was challenging. Robert looked at him coldly. Then you can join Patricia Munro and Michael Torres in the unemployment line. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Emily presented her ideas. Most of the executives resisted. They cited costs, logistics, industry standards. But Robert backed her on everything. By the end, they had a plan. Mandatory quarterly training on dignity and respect for all employees. Mystery shopper programs where people would test how staff treated passengers who looked homeless, disabled, or otherwise vulnerable. Zero tolerance policy for discrimination. First offense, written warning. Second offense, termination. New passenger bill of rights posted in every terminal, including the right to be treated with respect regardless of appearance. Creation of a passenger advocate office, staffed 24/7. Direct line to report mistreatment. Bonuses for employees who went above and beyond in treating passengers well. Peer-nominated, cash awards, public recognition. The executives left the meeting shell-shocked. Emily sat back in her chair, exhausted. They hate me. They're scared, Robert corrected. There's a difference. Will they actually do what we ask? They will if they want to keep their jobs. Robert smiled at her. You did great, by the way. Your father would be so proud. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I keep thinking about him, about what he'd say if he could see this. He can see it, Robert said, and he's proud. Trust me. That evening, Robert drove to the cemetery. He hadn't been in a while. Too painful. But today felt right. He found David Chen's grave. Simple headstone, name, dates. And underneath, he made the sky a little safer and the world a little kinder. Robert knelt down, brushed some leaves off the stone. Hey, old friend. Sorry it's been a while. The cemetery was quiet, just wind and distant traffic. I met your daughter yesterday, Emily. David, she's incredible. She stood up for me when nobody else would. She risked her job, her career, everything, just to do what was right. Robert's throat tightened. You'd be so proud of her. She's exactly like you. That same moral compass, that same courage, that same belief that people matter more than rules. He sat back on his heels. I'm giving her your job in a way, making her responsible for how we treat people, making sure that everyone who walks through our doors feels like they matter, feels like they're seen. A bird landed on the headstone, looked at Robert, flew away. I miss you, David. I miss our conversations. I miss your wisdom. But I see you in Emily. I see you in her son, Michael. You left a hell of a legacy, my friend. Robert stood up, brushed off his pants. I'm going to take care of them. Emily and Michael. I'm going to make sure they have every opportunity you would have given them. It's the least I can do." He walked back to his car, felt lighter somehow, like he'd kept a promise he didn't know he'd made. Over the next 6 months, everything changed. Emily transformed the airport. She was relentless. She fired 12 more employees for mistreating passengers. She promoted 15 frontline workers who'd shown exceptional kindness. She implemented every policy from the meeting, and it worked. Poster satisfaction scores went up 37%. Complaints dropped by half. Social media sentiment flipped from negative to overwhelmingly positive. News outlets did features on the airport that actually cares. Other airports started copying their policies. Emily became a thought leader, got invited to conferences, gave TED Talks. But she stayed humble, stayed focused on the work. 6 months to the day after the incident, Robert called Emily to his office. She walked in looking nervous. "Am I in trouble?" "Why would you be in trouble?" "Because you have that look. The serious look." Robert laughed. "Sit down. I have something for you." He slid a folder across the desk. Emily opened it. Inside was a contract. She read the first line and gasped. You're promoting me?" "Chief Experience Officer for the entire Calloway organization, not just the airport, all 15 hotels, all 23 restaurants, everything." "Robert, I don't know what to say." "Say yes." "Yes, of course yes, but why?" Robert leaned back in his chair. "Because 6 months ago, you stood up for someone you thought was nobody. You risked everything for a principle, for the belief that every person deserves dignity. That's the rarest quality in business. Hell, that's the rarest quality in life. And I need someone with that quality leading my company." Emily was crying now. "Your father would want this," Robert said gently. "He spent his whole career trying to make people feel safe and valued. Now you're going to do the same thing, on a much bigger scale. I won't let you down. I know you won't." They celebrated that night. Robert took Emily, her brother Michael, and a few other key employees to dinner at his favorite restaurant. During dessert, Robert stood up, capped his glass. "I want to say something. 6 months ago, I conducted a test. I dressed as a homeless man and went to our airport. I wanted to see if the values I'd spent decades preaching actually meant anything to our people. Most of them failed, but Emily passed. She didn't just pass, she set a new standard. She showed everyone what it means to have courage, to have integrity, to care about people more than policy." He looked at Emily. "Because of her, we're a better company. We're a kinder company. We're a company that actually lives its values instead of just printing them in a handbook." Everyone applauded. Emily was blushing. "But more than that," Robert continued, "she's reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Not to make money, not to build an empire, but to create something good, something that makes people's lives a little bit better, something that matters." He raised his glass. "To Emily, to her father David, who taught her well, and to kindness, the most underrated business strategy in the world." They all drank. Later, as they were leaving, Emily pulled Robert aside. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why do you still do it? The walk, now that everything's changed?" Robert smiled. "Because the moment I stop checking, the moment I assume everything's okay, that's when it'll all fall apart. Complacency is the enemy of excellence, Emily. You can never stop paying attention. Will you teach me how to do the walk?" Robert looked at her, surprised, pleased. "You want to?" "I think I need to. I think everyone in a leadership position should do it, at least once, so we never forget. Your father used to say the same thing, Robert said. He did? All the time. He said that pilots should occasionally ride in coach, just to remember what the experience is like for regular people. He did it twice a year, bought a coach ticket under a fake name, sat in the back, listened to passengers complain, took notes, made changes. Emily smiled. I didn't know that. There's a lot you didn't know about your father. He was a remarkable man.
One of the best I've ever known.
He thought the same about you, Emily said. He used to come home and tell us stories about Mr. Calloway, the owner who actually cared about people, who remembered names, who asked about families. He said you were different from other rich people. I'm not different, Robert said. I'm just trying not to forget. They stood there in the parking lot, the city lights spread out before them. Next month, Robert said, I'll take you on the walk. We'll visit the hotel in Phoenix. You'll dress down. We'll see how the staff treats you. I'm nervous already. Good. You should be. It's going to be uncomfortable, eye-opening, maybe even heartbreaking, but it's necessary. Okay, I'm in. They shook hands. Partners now, not just employer and employee, partners in a mission to make the world a little bit kinder. 1 year after the incident, Robert held a company-wide meeting. Every employee from every location gathered in the main terminal at the airport. Over 2,000 people. Robert stood on a stage, Emily next to him. A year ago, Robert began, I conducted an experiment. I dressed as a homeless man. I tested our values, and most of us failed. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to celebrate how far we've come. In the last year, passenger satisfaction is at an all-time high. Employee satisfaction is up 42%. Revenue is up. Retention is up. Everything is moving in the right direction. He paused. But more important than any of those numbers is this. We're treating people better. We're seeing people. We're making them feel like they matter. That was always the goal. That was always the mission. And we're finally living it. He gestured to Emily. This woman standing next to me is a huge part of that. She stood up when it was hard. She did the right thing when nobody else would. And because of her courage, all of us are better. The crowd applauded. Emily waved awkwardly.
But she's not the only one,
Robert continued. Over the past year, dozens of you have gone above and beyond. You've helped passengers in wheelchairs, you've comforted crying children, you've given directions to lost travelers, you've treated every single person who walks through our doors like they're VIPs. And that's what I want to recognize today. He pulled out a list. The following employees are receiving the Calloway Kindness Award, $5,000 each, and a week of paid vacation, and my personal gratitude. He read 32 names. Each person came up on stage, shook his hand, got a plaque and a check. The audience cheered for each one. When it was over, Robert gave the microphone to Emily. She stepped forward. I want to say something, she began. Her voice shook slightly. A year ago, I almost didn't stand up. I almost let my bosses treat Mr. Calloway badly. I almost stayed silent. Because I was scared. Scared of losing my job. Scared of making waves. Scared of standing out. She took a breath. But I kept hearing my father's voice in my head. He used to say, Emily, when you see something wrong, you have two choices. You can look away, or you can act. Looking away is easier, but acting is right. So I acted, and it changed my life. She looked out at the crowd. All of you have that same choice. Every day, every shift, every passenger. You can look away, or you can act. You can treat people like transactions, or you can treat them like human beings. The choice is always yours." Her voice got stronger. "And I'm here to tell you that acting matters. Kindness matters. Seeing people matters. It changes lives. It changed mine. It changed Mr. Calloway's. And it can change yours too." The crowd gave her a standing ovation. Robert stood next to her, clapping, tears in his eyes. This was it. This was what he'd been working toward his whole life. Not money, not success, but meaning, purpose, legacy. And he'd found it in a young woman with her father's courage, in a company that finally understood what mattered, in a moment when someone chose kindness over comfort. That was enough. That was everything. 2 years after the incident, Robert was diagnosed with cancer, pancreatic, stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months, maybe a year if the treatment worked. He didn't tell anyone at first, just went to his appointments, started chemo, kept working. But eventually, Emily noticed. "You've lost weight." "I'm fine." "Robert, you're not fine. What's going on?" So he told her. Emily cried, asked what she could do. Robert smiled. "Keep doing what you're doing. Keep making the company better. Keep being kind. That's all I need." "There has to be something else." "There's one thing," Robert said. "When I'm gone, I want you to keep doing the walk. Once a year. Promise me." "I promise." "And teach others to do it. Make it part of our leadership program. Every executive, every manager. Everyone needs to remember what it's like to be invisible." "I will. I promise." Robert nodded, satisfied. The next 6 months were hard. The chemo made him sick, weak. But he kept working, kept showing up, kept fighting. Emily was by his side the whole time, became like a daughter to him, brought him soup, drove him to appointments, sat with him when the pain was bad. "You don't have to do this," Robert said one day. "Yes, I do," Emily replied. "Why?" "Because you did it for me, and because that's what family does." Robert felt his heart break open. "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me what love looks like." 3 months before Robert died, he made a change to his will. He left 40% of his fortune to charity, another 40% to Emily and Michael Chen. The remaining 20% to a foundation in David Chen's name. The foundation would fund scholarships for young people in aviation who demonstrated exceptional character and kindness. Emily argued when she found out. "Robert, I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's not enough," Robert said. "You gave me hope. You gave me purpose. You reminded me why I built all of this. That's worth more than money." "But your family." "You are my family, Emily. You and Michael. You're the children I never had. The legacy I always wanted. Please don't fight me on this." Emily hugged him, sobbed into his shoulder. "Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for standing up that day. Thank you for being exactly who your father raised you to be." Robert James Calloway died on a Tuesday morning in March, peacefully, in his sleep. Emily was there, holding his hand. The funeral was huge. Thousands of people, employees, business partners, strangers whose lives he'd touched. During the service, Emily gave the eulogy. Robert Calloway was a lot of things: businessman, investor, philanthropist. But more than anything, he was kind. He believed that how you treat people matters, that everyone deserves dignity, that wealth means nothing if you forget your humanity. She looked out at the crowd. 2 years ago, he tested that belief. He dressed as a homeless man. He went to our airport, and most of us failed him. We judged him, dismissed him, treated him like he didn't matter. Her voice cracked. But he didn't give up on us. He used that failure to teach us, to change us, to make us better. And because of him, thousands of people have been treated with kindness and respect who otherwise wouldn't have been. She held up a worn jacket, Robert's father's jacket, the one he'd worn that day. He gave me this before he died. He said, "Emily, never forget where you came from. Never forget what it's like to be invisible. And never stop fighting for people who can't fight for themselves." She folded the jacket carefully. "I won't forget, Robert. I promise. None of us will." The crowd stood, applauded through their tears. After the service, people came up to Emily, shared stories. A woman said Robert had paid for her mother's cancer treatment. A man said Robert had given him a job when nobody else would. A teenager said Robert's scholarship had paid for flight school. On and on, story after story. Emily realized something. Robert hadn't just built a company, he'd built a legacy of kindness. And now it was her job to carry it forward. 5 years after Robert's death, Emily stood at gate 47, the same gate where everything had changed. There was a plaque on the wall now, dedicated to Robert James Calloway. It read, "He taught us that everyone deserves dignity, that kindness is not weakness, that how we treat the powerless reveals who we truly are." Next to the plaque was a photo, Robert in his duct-taped jacket, smiling, looking exactly like a homeless man. And underneath, "Don't judge, don't assume, just be kind." Emily touched the plaque, whispered, "Thank you, Robert, for everything." Then she walked to the bathroom, changed into old clothes, messed up her hair, looked in the mirror. She looked homeless, forgotten, invisible, perfect. She walked back out into the terminal, sat down in the waiting area, pulled out a sign she'd made. It said, "Hungry, anything helps." She sat there for an hour, watched people walk by. Most ignored her, some stared, a few looked disgusted. But then a young gate agent approached. She couldn't be more than 23. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you can't solicit here." Emily looked up, said nothing. The gate agent hesitated. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out a $20 bill. "Here, get yourself something to eat. And I'm not kicking you out. Take your time. Just maybe put the sign away." Emily took the money, felt tears sting her eyes. "Thank you. Of course, everyone deserves kindness." The gate agent walked away. Emily watched her go. Then she stood up, changed back into her regular clothes, found the gate agent's supervisor. "I need to speak with you about one of your employees." The supervisor looked worried. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, she's incredibly kind. She just gave me money when I was pretending to be homeless, and she treated me with dignity even though she thought I was breaking the rules. I want her promoted." The supervisor blinked. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" Emily smiled, handed over her business card. "I'm Emily Chen, CEO of Callaway Industries, and that young woman just passed a very important test." The supervisor's eyes went wide. I'll make sure she's recognized." "Good. And tell her something for me. Tell her that kindness is never wasted, that every act of compassion matters, and that she's exactly the kind of person we need in this world." "Yes, ma'am. I will." Emily walked away, felt Robert's presence, felt her father's presence. They were both proud of her. She knew it. And she was going to keep making them proud. One act of kindness at a time. for the rest of her life. Because that's what legacy means. Not buildings or money or plaques on walls, but people, changed hearts, lives touched, kindness spread. That was Robert's gift, and Emily was going to honor it, forever. And that's where we'll leave this story. The story of how one test changed everything, how one act of courage rippled outward, how kindness became the most powerful force in a business empire. If this moved you, if this made you think differently about how you treat people, then do something for me. Hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next story, and leave a comment. Tell me about a time someone showed you kindness when you needed it most. Or tell me about a time you stood up for someone when nobody else would. Because those stories matter, those moments matter. They're what make us human. They're what make life worth living. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being the kind of person who believes in kindness. The world needs more of you. More of Emily. More of Robert. More people who see others, who stand up, who care. Be that person today and every day. I'll see you in the next story.